All right, guys, we have got our Minnesota Vikings 2026 season preview. I believe this is number 10 so far, and this is a super fun one. I'm really interested to get into this one. A lot of people's kind of candidate to have, a jump up from last season. All the quarterback controversies, all the talented coaching here with defensive coordinator, head coach. Just a lot of stuff going on in this one, and I'm really excited to get into it again. Make sure you check out the other ones we've done. But this is the third team in the NFC North that we are doing after we did the Packers really recently and the Bears second. So, yeah, why don't we go ahead and jump on into it? We'll start with what happened last year. This was a little bit strange, up and down, I suppose you could say. Started 4-8, finished the year on a 5-game win streak to end 9-8, and just missed the playoffs. So a little bit of a burst down the stretch there. QB carousel a little bit. JJ McCarthy, of course, was starter. Got some injuries in there. A little bit of Wentz. Some Max Bosmer, who might be no offense, probably one of the worst quarterbacks to ever play in the league. And again, some older Wentz and some JJ McCarthy. So a whole lot of different quarterbacks playing throughout the year, and they still finished 9-8, which is great. That being said, quarterback JJ McCarthy is the one we're going to have to talk about along the way, but had a bad year. Again, missed his first year through injury, and then had to kind of get thrown in here a little bit. And again, didn't really have a good year. Finished bottom 3 in some really bad metrics and historically bad in some others that we'll get to once we get to the quarterback room. But again, the Vikings have done a pretty good job in the coaching department. Again, Brian Flores is a struggle to hire as a head coach somewhere else, and you're getting an elite defensive mind who really doesn't ever feel like he's at risk to go anywhere, which is crazy. Kevin O'Connell, we kind of like. So it's a pretty good coaching staff when it comes to calling offensive plays. When it comes to calling defensive plays, you're not going to find too many places that are better. And again, you get to keep one of the best defensive minds in the game. So you're in a pretty great spot in terms of the coaching staff, in my opinion. That being said, the talent level here is starting to drift a little bit. Quezzy, the former GM, just recently released of his duties. He had 4 drafts, and he got a total of 172 starts out of those 4 drafts combined, which is pretty remarkable. The Sam Darnold thing will always be an issue. It was just one of those things hanging over this group after, what happened last year for both of those sides. So there are issues here that we're going to talk about. There are some things that you like in terms of lifting guys up with the coaching and stuff like that. And obviously, we got the QB situation, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But despite all of that stuff, this team still won 9 games and finished above 500. So there's hope that, with a couple of changes here and there, we can get back to the 14-3 type teams that of very, very recently. So yeah, last year, again, passing offense 29th in EPA, not what you want to see. 20th in rush offense, 31st in total offensive EPA. And this is where the team hangs its hat on here. Pass defense, 2nd in EPA against. Rush defense, 4th. Total defensive EPA, 4th in the league. So that's where you like to see. That being said, in terms of the roster, particularly on that defensive end, there's some players going out the door. Jonathan Grenard out the door. That's a big loss. Jalen Naylor's gone. I think he's a little bit overrated, some of the stuff going around him. Javon Hargrave, another starter on the interior defensive line, gone. Ryan Wright gone, the punter, though they replace it with Johnny Hecker. Ben Sims gone. Justin Skule gone. Of course, Rondale Moore, rest in peace, out the door. So it's a lot of decent players going. And again, I made that sound pretty bad with Rondale Moore. I didn't mean it out the door after that. That was just the end of the list. That was my natural reaction. I apologize. Um, but really unfortunate, of course, what happened to him. But everything else, there's talent going out the door there. So defensive talent is the worry, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But some good players going out the door, some decent players coming in. Juwan Jennings at wide receiver is probably an upgrade. James Pierre, hopefully a solid piece. Ryan Van Denmark, depth. Kyler Murray, who we're going to talk about, of course. Eric Johnson on the interior. And then the draft had some players in the trenches. Caleb Banks, interior defensive line. Jake Golday at linebacker. Dominique Orange, defensive line. Caleb Tiernan, offensive line. Jacoby Thomas, safety. Max Bredesen, a fullback. Charles Demings, excuse my fucking nice maker over there, corner. Damon Claiborne, running back. And then Gavin Gerhardt at center. So, yeah, it's a lot coming in, a lot going out, a lot going on. And speaking of a lot going on, let's get into the roster. And we're going to start at quarterback, where we always begin. And yeah, a lot going on here. The quarterback battle. Third year quarterback J.J. McCarthy, 10th overall pick from 2 years ago, and newly acquired former number 1 overall pick from 2019, Kyler Murray. Yeah, both of these players have kind of underachieved what you would expect out of them considering their draft position. Again, you got an empty year out of J.J. McCarthy, his first year, and his second year pretty bad pretty much everywhere. And Kyler, when you draft a player number 1 overall, you're hoping, that he's like a top 10 guy. And Kyler feels like he's on the edge of that once in a while. He has those bursts of play where you're like, this is a really good quarterback in there. And then he has a lot of average play going around him. So, again, when you draft number 1, you're looking for like a top 10 guy. Never really got there with the Cardinals, and the Cardinals are going into full rebuild mode. When you go into full rebuild mode and you don't have a top 10 guy at quarterback, you're willing to move him on, let his cap hit go, and he's able to go somewhere else where he can probably contend a little bit more, and Minnesota's probably that place. So Cardinals full reset. Cardinals will be the next team we do, funny enough. But a full reset there. And again, that means we get ourselves a fun little quarterback battle. And again, last year there was a lot of bad quarterback play, J.J. McCarthy included. And they won 9 games. If they get good quarterback play out of Kyler or J.J., whoever it is, you can see the ceiling going up a little bit. So yeah, Kyler comes in and does well. So let's talk about the JJ side. Again, torrid time last year. And it's unfortunate because he did miss his entire rookie season, and he was supposed to sit, a little bit there and kind of just learn a little bit, and he kind of missed that whole portion, and it's unfortunate. And I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I thought JJ was gonna be a good player in the NFL. He was someone I didn't particularly like coming out of college, but it's unfortunate when you miss an entire year of development through injury, and then you're kind of forced into things, because you can't really sit the 10th overall pick for 2 years. So we can debate whether he got a fair shake on his development. Just a little bit unlucky with injury, but if you're a quarterback going in the top 10, you got to be ready to go. And yeah, so last year he came in. He was bad, really bad. I'm going to run through some numbers here. This is out of 36 qualifying quarterbacks last year. So number 36 is as low as you can get of the quarterbacks who qualified last year for this. Number 36 in interception rate. Number 35 in EPA. Number 35 in completion rate. Number 35 in passer rating. Number 35 in accuracy. Number 33 in touchdown to interception ratio. Number 29 in success rate, and number 26 in yards per attempt. Not good, as you can see there. There's also some more here. Number 31 He took a sack on 26% of his pressures, so number 31 there. Number 33 in sack rate. Number 36 in catastrophic play rate. When a catastrophic play is an interception or a sack. So dead last there, which is obviously horrible. I mean, he's close to the bottom in pretty much every stat you don't want to be close to the bottom in. Since 2020, 213 quarterbacks have attempted 200 plus passes in a season. JJ is the only one to finish in the bottom 10 in completion rate and catastrophic play rate. He's the only QB in the last decade to complete less than 58% of his passes while having a catastrophic play rate above 14%. Him and Jamarcus Russell are the only two players this century, since 2000, to hit those marks as non-rookies. Then again, and again, JJ, his first year playing, but he's been around. So I mean, we're looking at some historically bad numbers last year, and this one on passes thrown between the numbers here. So passes inside the two hash marks. There are 45 total quarterbacks in this one, so 45 is as low as it can get. Number 43 in accuracy, number 43 in completion rate, number 42 in EPA per attempt, number 37 in success rate. So it's genuinely some of the worst quarterback play in 25 years, man. It was really bad. And you kind of, again, I kind of feel for him a little bit. I didn't think he'd be too good coming out, and I thought a lot of pressure was put on him where he was drafted, and kind of that injury and then being shoved into this when the plan was to kind of have him sit before he jumped in, and then he was just kind of pushed in after a year-long injury type thing. And I do feel bad about that, but this is a results business, man. This is the NFL. And when you get drafted in the top 10, you can't just be sitting around for 2 years learning. You got to be ready to go. The people's jobs are on the line here, and you got to be ready to go. And again, circumstances be damned. I don't think he'd complain too much about the circumstances. But again, that means he was historically horrible last year, and they still won 9 games. So you can't fault the Vikings, who want to contend, and you kind of get, seats get a little bit hot. GM seat gets a little bit hot. The coach's seat gets a little bit hot sometimes, and you want to contend and you want to raise your ceiling pretty aggressively. You can't fault him for bringing in another quarterback, bringing in somebody into the quarterback room that can raise their ceiling and their floor a little bit. And that's why we got ourselves a competition with Kyler Murray, and a third-year quarterback who was drafted 10th is kind of already gone. And again, that quarterback competition came and went. It ended today or yesterday at the time of me recording this video, and Kyler Murray did win that battle. So Kyler is going to be the guy who is starting for the Minnesota Vikings to start the season. I do think Kyler is a pretty significant step up from JJ. I'm not prepared to kind of put him in the area some other people are prepared to put him in. Kyler is going to have to come in and just be solid, which is, he's more than capable of doing. Let's be perfectly frank. But people are putting him in like this system where in this idea that he's just going to be a top 10 EPA kind of guy, just a top 10, come in here and be that kind of guy. I don't think he's necessarily a better quarterback than Sam Darnold was. And that offense that year was like 15th in EPA per play. So I'm not prepared to kind of lift that up with Kyler. And again, Kyler is capable in burst at playing at that kind of level. I just would hold off on the idea that the floor is there, because I don't think that's the case. In Kyler's last fully healthy season 2 years ago, he threw 11 picks to 21 touchdowns, 28th in the league in turnover-worthy plays, 16.7% pressure to sack rate, all while being like an average rusher, and or not an average one, like a top 10 rusher, but not like an elite rusher, which you kind of hoped he would be at some stage. He's getting a little bit older. Those hits hurt a little bit more, and he's not exactly a huge guy. So I just want to I like Kyler in terms of it being a pretty big upgrade on JJ. And again, you don't need a huge upgrade on JJ to be a really good football team. If Kyler were playing last year, that's probably an 11 or 12 win team. Like the floor is so much higher. That being said, I just think we need to relax on what Kyler is expected to be here and what he can be and will be. I think the floor is higher. I don't think the ceiling is as high as people are kind of putting out. So I would hold back just a little bit on what Kyler will be, what he can be. Again, I think he's a big step up. It's just I think we need to relax just a little bit. The rest of the quarterback room, Carson Wentz, who was again all right, and Spurs fine as a backup. Max Brosmer, who again was like the worst quarterback I've seen play a game in a pretty long time. He's young. We'll see what he looks like going forward, but yeah, not in love there. In terms of trading JJ McCarthy, there's word that might happen, and I can see a world where that happens. I don't have a problem with if you're a team like a Miami or like a Cleveland or a team that's like kind of just floating in quarterback limbo. If you can get JJ for like a really low end pick, why not? But we'll see about that. Otherwise, he might just sit there behind Kyler, and if Kyler doesn't step up, maybe he gets another shot. Who knows? We'll see. But I expect Kyler to kind of be the starter throughout the year. Should be noted. Next, we have the wide receiver room. This is a really good room. Probably I think is my third rated wide receiver room because Justin Jefferson is like incredibly good. It's my fourth rated wide receiver room behind Dallas, Detroit, and Cincinnati. Justin Jefferson is really, really good. And again, we were talking about historical levels of actual awfulness last year, and he still went for 1,000. So Justin Jefferson is, to me, the second best receiver in the NFL, right behind Jamar Chase. You can flip flop him. I'm not going to argue with you if you think Justin Jefferson's the best receiver in the NFL. He is incredibly, incredibly good. He has had an incredible, incredible season. He's remained relatively quiet through all this stuff. He's not like loudly pissed off and a diva-esque and stuff like that. He can get pissed during games and stuff when he's not seeing the ball, which I get, but there are some guys in the NFL at this position who are just ridiculous human beings, it feels like, when it comes to some of this stuff. I got to applaud JJ for just being, taking it in stride. But he is an elite, elite, elite wide receiver. Jordan Addison is a really solid 2. I like Addison. Again, still pretty young, so maybe he can continue to kind of move in the right direction there, but a very, very, very good player as well. Juwan Jennings comes in, solid 3, should be good in the blocking game. But another one who was kind of overrated because I think there were so few like good wide receivers on the free agency, and good players are harder to come by in free agency these days, but he's one of the better ones, and I think he's overrated just a little bit. He's a good 3, nothing really more. And then the rest is kind of iffy stuff. Ty Felton, Miles Price, Dylan Bell, Jashwan Jones. You don't want to see a ton of those players getting a ton of good snaps. Somebody there's going to have to step up and be the 4, though, and that might be a little bit lower down the line than what we'll see. The running back room, Aaron Jones, okay. He's another year older. We'll see what his carries look like throughout the year. He continues to kind of miss games from injury, missed games last year. And while he's running okay, he's not running better than Jordan Mason is, who's the backup here. Again, last year I kind of expected Jordan Mason to take control of this back room, and a lot of missed time by Aaron Jones meant a lot of carries by Jordan Mason, and they were kind of splitting things, but at some stage, I kind of expect Jordan Mason to kind of take over here. Whether he's like the long-term answer, I don't know. But 4.8 yards a carry, I think he's a better back and a more efficient back than Aaron Jones is right now. And again, age catching up with him, injuries catching up with him a little bit. We'll see what the running back room is here, but probably a split. And Aaron Jones is still very capable. Damon Claiborne, late round pick. We'll see what he's got, see if he can be a problem there. Xavier Scott, Um, Probably not going to see a ton of. They draft Max Brederson, again, a fullback, which I don't talk about fullbacks very, very often here. There are like 4 teams who run fullbacks these days, but they drafted one, so we'll see if he can be a havoc in the run game and the blocking game, and maybe we'll get some tight end snaps. And again, a lot of teams are going to be running more 12 and 13. We're in that cycle in the NFL now where it was like, hey, nobody's going to be able to beat the cover two shell, and they can't do any of that stuff. Nobody can throw. So teams are going to run, and they're going to run all over you, and they're going to put extra blockers in there, and they're going to try and get 5 yards of carry and go up and down the field on the ground until you bring extra guys in the box, and then they're going to throw with your one safety deep. So the NFL is slowly turning away from the cover two. It's not turning away from cover two shell, but it's turning a lot more toward the run game to kind of avoid the cover two shell. And again, the NFL goes through ebbs and flows there, but that's kind of where we are at that moment. So we might see a couple fullbacks return, and we got one here. Tight end room. TJ Hawkinson, again, still a really solid player. This is the player I don't love in this offense with Kyler. Now, Kyler found it's tough to kind of look at Trey McBride's numbers and be like, hey, he's underused. But when Jacoby Brissett's in there for Arizona, you can see the difference in terms of being able to find the tight end over the middle. And again, Kyler, it's just something he has trouble with, throwing over the middle. And it can be whatever the reason is, if it's because he's smaller or it's because he just struggles seeing the field like that. It's just something he struggles with a little bit more. And TJ's kind of had an up and down last year or two, and that would be the player I think kind of has a drop a little bit in terms of receiving production, but is still a very good player, good route runner, and he's going to get open. We'll see if he can be found. Josh Oliver, solid in terms of some of the blocking stuff as well. I keep moving my thing over to the right. Excuse me. In terms of the rest of the group, I thought, okay, yeah. So Bartholomew's here. I thought for a moment he might have been a rookie. Ben Urasek, just some depth guys here. But again, TJ Hawk is good. We'll see if he can be found in terms of some of the over the middle stuff with Kyler. Now, onto the offensive line. This is an above average unit. It's a good unit when healthy. It was solid last year. Dealt with a decent amount of injuries last year that kind of pushed this rating down a ton. But the run blocking was really elite. 3rd in the league in run block win rate. Pass block was the issue. 25th in pass block win rate. And again, solid players here, but the injuries are starting to mount up a little bit. Darisaw, a really good player, really good left tackle. Really like what you see there. He's missed 17 games over the past 2 seasons. Only played 500 snaps last year. He needs to be healthy. You don't want, you don't want your new smaller quarterback taking extra hits. He needs to be healthy to kind of get back up into that really, really good tier. And again, the tier, it's like, I'm not saying that he's gone away from that tier or anything, because when he's healthy, he's really good. But in terms of being able to produce really good snaps all year long, he's got to be healthy. And again, really good player. Number 1 in run block win rate last year. On the other side, Brian O'Neill, another player who was really, really good last year. He's been a genuinely good tackle for a long time. This is one of the best tackle duos in the NFL when they're both healthy. Top 12 in PFF's offensive tackles last year. 10th in run block win rate. 15th in pass block win rate, which is excellent to be kind of top 15 in both of those. There are very few tackles who do that. But yeah, it's an elite tackle duo when they're healthy. And again, Darisaw's missed a lot of time, but when he's on the field, when Brian O'Neill's on the field, you don't have to worry about too much about the tackles. It's the interior here that's not as good as the exterior. Will Freeze, Donovan Jackson, both top 45-ish guards, and nothing special, but solid and can put a decent shift in. Um, you hope that they can keep up a decent level. And again, when you're sitting next to two good tackles, uh, you kind of get hit in just a little bit. Center's a bit more of an issue. Blake Brandel, bottom three or bottom third type of center last year. Pass blocking was all right. Run blocking was a problem. So that's that's something that kind of works throughout the interior there in terms of um, run blocking, pass blocking. They all three of them lead or lean to the pass block side, and they're solid at it. Um, the run block stuff is a little bit iffy here and there, and can go through spurts where it's not very good. So we'll see. Depth is okay. They bring in Ryan Van Denmark again that we spoke of. Comes in. He was solid in his snaps last year. A nice piece to have. Caleb Tiernan, again, a rookie comes in, so hopefully he can hit the ground running. And if he has to play snaps, he's good to go. The interior depth, not ideal. And again, the interior is not ideal in general. It means the depth's not very good in general either. But yeah, that's the offense. And again, the way the defense plays, if the defense is going to be a top 5 unit, which we'll talk about in a moment, if the defense is going to be a top 5 unit, you don't have to be a top 10 unit to be a good football team. You only got to be like an average unit. And when you have talent at wide receiver, elite talent at wide receiver, and you have a decent quarterback, like an average quarterback, and you've got 2 elite tackles, and you've got 2 running backs who can do a job, you can get to that 15th mark pretty comfortably, I think. And again, Kevin O'Connell, I like his play calling. And again, I think a lot of that is slightly overrated. But it's definitely good enough to kind of put him in the top 10, 15 play callers for sure. So if they can get average work here, you could be a really, really good football team. So we'll see there. So let's jump onto the defense. Is this going to be another top 5 unit? We'll see. Again, 4th in EPA against last year. Brian Flores is just an unbelievable play caller. To me, one of the best defensive minds in the league. Blitz at a 46% rate, highest in the league. Even when they weren't blitzing, they were forcing the highest pressure rate, which is gigantic, which means they were getting pressure on like every snap, it feels like. And the problem is when a coach like this, who blitzes on half of the snaps, also gets the highest pressure rate when they're not blitzing, it's really, really difficult for offenses to pick up, because even if you correctly pick out that they're not bringing pressure, they're still getting pressure. So really, really difficult to do that. An elite front with a secondary. Again, the secondary is interesting because the guys there are not like elite and they're not great in spurts, but you don't need to cover super long when you're getting pressures at a crazy rate and the blitzes are getting pressures and stuff like that. So it's an interesting dynamic that comes through here. That being said, there are some guys missing. Allen's gone. Hargrave as well from the interior. Grenard all gone from the front 7. This is definitely a talent loss in terms of what we had last year here in the front 7 and what we have this year in the front 7. So we'll see what it looks like. Again, that pressure rate through blitzes is probably just not going to disappear because that's all scheme and stuff. The pressure rate, the highest pressure rate in the NFL on standard rushes, probably not going to be that high with the guys missing. So let's jump into it. Let's jump into what this defensive line is going to look like without those guys. Grenard again on the edge, Hargrave, Allen gone. Interior in particular looks way different now. Caleb Banks gets added to the mix, 1st round pick. We'll see what that looks like. Hopefully he can take a step in and just be a force right from the jump. Again, I'm not a talent scout. I don't really scout players in college football like that, so you're going to have to go look somewhere else if you're interested on what he could bring to the table right from the jump. We're just hoping that as a 1st round pick, he can hit the ground running and kind of take away and make it look or seem that those guys haven't left. But they're big shoes to fill. That being said, coming off of foot surgery, I believe in March, so not ideal in terms of starting, but he should be all right. Jalen Redmond, he's been pretty good in his first 2 seasons in the league. 18th best interior defensive lineman last year, so hopefully you can keep running, or you can keep that up, keep running in the same direction there. So if him and Banks are solid there, there's two pieces. The rest of it, not great. Levi Drake Rodriguez looks like he's going to start. Bad year last year, 67th on PFF for interior defensive lineman. Does run stop, or doesn't run stop or pass rush very well. He'll need to take a step in the right direction, or you're going to need to get some work from somewhere else. Dominique Orange, a rookie from the 3rd round, maybe he can step in. And again, defensive tackle is one of those positions where the talent leaks a little bit further into the draft. So we'll see what that looks like for the 3rd rounder. The rest is just not great. Dawkins, not so good. Loudermilk was horrible. This front 7, this interior is going to have to one step in good. You already have one spot of the 3 who's probably a problem in Rodriguez, and then you have a rookie in the other spot coming off an injury, and another good player in the middle there. You cannot afford to lose guys to injury. You just cannot here. So we'll see. Hopefully we get some positive jumps from players as well. Edge is interesting. Andrew Van Ginkel is a good player. Finishes plays well. Decent when you drop him into coverage sometimes. 3rd in the league in batted passes. He does a ton of stuff. That being said, some of his pressure stuff is starting to drop a little bit. And this year, you think without Hargrave, without Grenard, he's going to see a little bit more attention, as well as Dallas Turner, who we'll talk about in a moment. These guys on the edge are probably going to see a little bit more attention from these offenses because they don't, at the moment, theoretically, they don't have to double anybody in the middle on pass down. So we'll see what that looks like. Again, he's a really good player. Does a ton of really good stuff. Would like the pass rush to kind of move forward a little bit. And again, Dallas Turner on the other side. This is it. Now it's time to make this like your spot. We spoke about this like Van Ness. Again, you can kind of rotate in and out when Van Ginkel and Grenard and you are all kind of able to rotate in and out when everybody's, fit and firing. Not going to have that luxury this year. You're going to have to play a lot of snaps. You're going to have to do it at a consistent basis, and you're going to have to do it with a little bit of attention on you. So we'll see what it looks like. And again, he played really good in spurts. He's a solid player. 9 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 29 stops. All that stuff's fantastic. But 43rd in total pressures. We kind of want him getting the pressure rate up. We want the edges to have, or we need the edges to have pretty consistent pressure rate. Otherwise, that number that was number 1 in pressure rate without blitzing, that there could be a world where that drops pretty aggressively. But the talent's there, no doubt about it. Tyler Batty, Bo Richter for depth, super small samples, and even in those samples, there's really not a lot of great there. It's just a way thinner room. Again, the talent in the front 7, or on the front, on the defensive line in particular, is just drained a little bit this year. Linebacker, solid as a group, nothing crazy great. Blake Cashman had a decent year last year. Run defense stuff is good. You're gonna see, like, particularly with PFF and just the way this team plays in general, you're gonna see a lot of stuff that says really good run defense, and coverage is a problem. And what a lot of what Brian Flores likes here is because when you're blitzing, if they're running into it, you're just gonna have a good down for the most part. The coverage stuff, because you're blitzing so much, it doesn't need to be super great. So a lot of the times it really isn't, because there's just so much chaos going on and teams are getting the ball out quick, and you don't have to cover very often when you're getting to the quarterback so often and so quickly. You don't have to cover for extended periods of time like some other places do, but it shows up a little bit funky in, just grading systems in general. So you can take some of these with a grain of salt. That being said, the coverage is a little bit funky even outside of that stuff. So while the coverage grades might be a little bit weird, they still, a lot of these guys that we're going to talk about who didn't cover particularly well are going to have to improve in that department anyway. But again, good in run D, coverage an issue for Blake Cashman. But again, bad coverage can be hidden a little bit on this team. Eric Wilson is a really similar profile because of just the types of players they are and the way this defense plays. He was way worse at coverage, though. So hopefully we can kind of step up in the middle, because we don't want everybody in the middle of the field behind the front being an issue in coverage. And again, if the pass rush is a little bit worse, they're going to have to cover a little bit more this year. So you kind of want to step up a little bit there. So we'll see. Jamal Adams might get a couple snaps here. We're going to mention him here as a depth piece. We're going to mention him in the secondary as a depth piece. He can probably play in a variety of different spots. But he played pretty well last year, so we'll see where he ends up. Jake Golday, again, the rookie drafted in the second round, hoping to make his mark if somebody's not playing particularly well up front. It's a complicated defense, and a defense that requires, a lot of different things going on, so it probably takes some time to kind of get him into that spot, but decent draft capital on him. Ivan Pace, kind of young. He hasn't really played particularly well at all in his career, really. Secondary, interesting. Not in a good way. This is a below average group to me. Jay Ward, Joshua Metellus are slated to start in the back two. Like a lot of these players, again, the run defender, the blitzing, that all looks good. The coverage, not so much. Jay Ward was a little bit all over the place last year in terms of where he played, but he graded pretty well in coverage for the most part, and his downhill stuff was good along the way. So if being the deeper safety, hopefully the coverage is good and he can handle some of the over-the-top stuff, and maybe he can take another step as well. The sample size is kind of small, which is a worry, but we'll see. Theo Jackson, solid last year, decent all around. Again, nothing special here. We'll see. Jacoby Thomas, rookie, middle round rookie. We'll see if he can get into the unit a little bit, but there are some decent players in there for coverage. There are some players in there. Most of them are pretty good at the run stuff. So it's an okay room. Nothing spectacular. Corner's really interesting. Isaiah Rodgers just continues to put good seasons together. He's had a pretty good career just in general. Solid in pretty much every year he's played in the NFL so far. Top 20 PFF guy last year. So hopefully he can just keep that up. Byron Murphy, going to start there as well. Didn't play particularly well last year, and he's like a vet with good experience, but he's never been really super great. The potential's always felt like it's been there, but we're at a point now where that's probably gone, and this is probably who he is, and he's fine, but you kind of want better there. James Pierre gets bought in. He was the number one covered corner last year, according to PFF, which is pretty great. We'll see what that looks like. Again, small sample, and his career hasn't been super great. But again, if the coverage continues to be really good, that's probably all they're going to be looking for there. And if you can get some coverage, you can get some good play, some snaps like that on this team, the way it's kind of trending, the way the pass rush is kind of trending, that's going to be like gold, man. So hopefully he can kind of keep going. Again, it's not been a great career, and it's a really small sample from last year. But the numbers, the cover stuff looks really fantastic. So we'll see what that looks like. Depth, Charles Demings, a late round pick. Helassi and McLaughrin, not a whole lot of snaps between them, not a ton we can take there, but an interesting unit. It's interesting. The defense as a whole this year, I think, takes a step back. How far of a step back? I'm not particularly sure. Again, I'm a huge Brian Flores guy. I have no doubt he'll figure it out, and I have no doubt that this is going to be like a good defense overall. But this team was like a top 3 or 4 defense last year, and without the interior, and the potentially without if Caleb Banks comes in and just doesn't hit the ground running, the interior is going to be like just a problem in general. And if Dallas Turner doesn't take a step and Van Ginkel slows down a little bit more, we're looking at a pretty like basic pass rush here. And while they blitz a ton, again, 46% of the time last year, and while half those snaps, the pass rush like that isn't going to be like a huge, huge, huge issue, on those 50% of snaps where they're not blitzing, all of a sudden we could be looking at a pretty ordinary defense there. And again, there are some decent players on the back end, um, but there are a few holes in coverage, particularly at linebacker. Byron Murphy, who hasn't played super well. God forbid an injury somewhere to like Isaiah Rogers or or like Pierre doesn't just keep that stuff up and he goes back to who he was and it's just kind of a piece. There could be spots where I think the defense does not look good, particularly against some really good offensive lines going forward. So we'll see. Again, I think this takes a step back, but for the most part, it's tough to kind of look at a Brian Flores defense and be like, hey, you're going to suck. I'm definitely not going there. Again, I think this is at minimum an above average defense. It's probably a top 10 defense just by scheme alone. So we'll see what it looks like there. But I think it takes a little bit of a step back from what it was last year. As for the schedule, not easy, but some winnable games early. You got Green Bay at home to start the season. That game is a pick right now. Actually, you know what? I think it may have gotten to a point where Minnesota are slight favorites. 1 point maybe. Yeah, they're slight favorites. Minus 116 to win that game. Minus 102 for Green Bay. So slight favorites at home in that opening game. Then you go to Chicago, another division opponent, to Tampa Bay. Those are tough games. So those are three difficult games. Again, two on the road and a tough one against a good Green Bay team. If you can win two of those, you split the road game and you win the home game, then you get Miami at home and New Orleans on the road. There's a world where you're going in there 4-1. There's also a route there where it's like 2-3 going into your bye, and then we got some things to think about because after the bye it gets a little bit tough. Indianapolis at home, and then at Detroit, Buffalo at home, at Green Bay, San Francisco overseas. That is a really difficult 4-game stretch, and depending on what Indianapolis are, a 5-game stretch right out of the bye. Atlanta, Carolina at home, at New England, and then Detroit at home, Washington at home, at the Jets, and then Chicago at home. There are winnable games on this schedule. Again, Jets, Carolina, Atlanta, New Orleans, Miami, Indianapolis are all winnable from the jump, just away from home or at home. Then you get some of these home games that are definitely winnable. Washington, you get your division games. Indianapolis, Tampa Bay, like these are all kind of winnable games. And again, I think by the way other people speak, I'm a little bit down on Minnesota just as a whole, but not to a point where I'm like directly interested in fading this football team. I think the floor is just so much higher than it was with JJ McCarthy, with Kyler Murray back there, that and um I believe in Brian Flores so much that I don't want to go against this football team. I think there's a world where they win 12 games and we'll see, but in terms of a bet, I'm not going to go against this football team. This is more of a week to week type of thing. But we did make one bet here. Justin Jefferson, 1,000 plus receiving yards, minus 240. That is a $24 bet. This is probably the juiciest play we are going to bet probably throughout this entire series. But Justin Jefferson is just so good. And Justin Jefferson went through like hell last year and still ended up 50 yards over 1,000. He's been healthy most of his career. He missed 7 games one year and then 1 game in his rookie season, though that might have just been a 16-game season. And he's hit 1,000 yards pretty comfortably in all of those. Even that year where he only went to 10, he still hit for 1,000. I think with a quarterback with a higher floor, I'd be really surprised to not see him hit 1,000 unless he played like 9 or 10 games. So if he were to play 15 games, I'm pretty confident he gets here. I think he can get here on 13 games, 17 games. I'd be genuinely floored to see him not get to 1,000 yards. And this just feels like a bounce back year for an elite wide receiver. So those are our Minnesota Vikings. A lot going on. A really interesting football team, but really excited to kind of see how their season unfolds. I'm really excited to see what Brian Flores does um, with the defense and kind of just the talent deficit there compared to last year. And Kevin O'Connell gets a step up in quarterback, so we'll see what that all looks like. And yeah, a really interesting football team, and really excited to see how they go.